say this many, many times. There is no off season in the NFL. There are just 4 different seasons. There's the regular season, there's the postseason, there's the preseason, and then there's what we're in now, which I call the player procurement season, which is combine, free agency, and draft. And we are there as the combine is underway, or will be getting underway this week in Indianapolis. So for more on the combine and what to make of how it affects the upcoming draft, and especially the top of the draft, delighted to be joined now by Emmanuel Acho, who does a great job for us covering college and the NFL, and obviously spent 5 or 6 years playing for, among other teams, the Browns, the Eagles, and the Giants in the NFL. Emmanuel, thanks for being with us. The Burrow thing is interesting, right? Because he's a kid from Ohio, and the Bengals obviously have the number 1 pick in Cincinnati. On one level, it makes all the sense in the world, but it just feels like there may be some hesitation on the side of the Burrow camp to just be wholeheartedly all in on going to Cincinnati, which quite frankly would be understandable.
Yeah, you're exactly right on that. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And I think Joe Burrow, he understands that, yeah, he may go number 1 overall. But if he goes number 1 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that has been in utter disarray for a decade and change, that what's really going to happen to his career? And it also doesn't help that several former Bengals players have spoke out against that organization, including the likes of Carson Palmer, if I'm not mistaken. And so Joe Burrow, he understands, like, yes, he wants to be the number 1 pick, and he will be the number 1 pick. But going to the Bengals could set his career on a backtrack.
So I was a 10th round pick back when there were 12 rounds. You were a 6th round pick in a 7-round draft, so we were never in this position. Is this something you could do? Is this something, if you had that leverage, that you think you would be able to do to tell a team, no, don't pick me, I'm not coming to play for you?
I don't think so. I don't think that I would have the sort of guts, and also I don't think that I would have the necessary parental guidance. Think about the people who did it. Eli Manning, he had Peyton. More importantly, he had Archie. Joe Burrow, his dad's a football coach. They're in the game. I'm first-generation American. Football to my parents was soccer. So I don't necessarily have the sort of counsel and generations of football knowledge who could have told me and enlightened me on the matter. But let's not forget one thing. Joe Burrow doesn't have as much leverage as he think he does. His last name is Burrow. His last name isn't Manning. And so while he has said and verbalized that he has leverage, I'm not convinced that the dude has as much leverage as he thinks. And right now he's playing with house money. Had a phenomenal last year at LSU. Just go be the number 1 pick and hope for the best.
Yeah, look, he has as much leverage as he's willing to apply, I think is the right way to look at it. Because if he really wanted to be that dude, like you alluded to, John Elway and Eli Manning were both very, very public. He sort of hinted at it.
Yes.
I mean, John Elway said, do not draft me. Eli Manning and his family said, we do not want to go to San Diego. So if he wants that leverage, he's going to have to be a lot more vocal than he's been so far.
And we're going to find out today and in the coming days at the NFL Combine. This is what I love about this Combine period. Not things so trivial as measuring the size of your hands, but rather, I want to hear what Burrow has to say about Cincy. It's not enough for him to be mum on it. It's not enough for him to simply say, you know what, I'd be happy with whoever takes me. I need to hear him say, I want to go to Cincinnati. I'm excited to be the number 1 pick. And I think Bengals management and head coach Zach Taylor, he wants to hear that as well.
Talking to Emmanuel Acho now, our ESPN football analyst, and we're getting ready to do the Combine. Your brother Sam still in the league. He was a 4th-round pick by the Arizona Cardinals back in 2011, looking at some of his Combine numbers. What do you think? I have my thoughts on the Combine. We just found out Joe Burrow's hands are, oh, my God, only 9 inches. What are your thoughts on that, and then kind of overall how we look at the Combine?
Let's put the Combine in perspective, gentlemen. The Combine should be used to support data. The Combine should not be used to create an idea of something that does not exist. If Joe Burrow was a receiver, for example, and he was plagued by numerous drops, then all of a sudden he has 9-inch hands. That's a big deal. But Joe Burrow, he doesn't have a fumbling issue. He doesn't have a ball security issue. So his hand size should mean nothing. Again, when you look at the combine, sometimes it can get in its own way. And rather than looking for data and rather than looking for information that actually is meaningful, we look for data and information that is most easy to measure. The 40 time, that's easy to quantify. Hand size, vertical jumps, these things are easy to quantify, when in reality, they often mean nothing. So that's kind of my 2 cents in how I feel about it.
Well, you're right. And the best example of that in recent memory is there are two quarterbacks that ran the same 40 time, and you look at them completely differently. Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes ran the same 40 time at the combine, 4.8. Yeah. I think we can all say with great certainty one was a better runner and is a better runner in the NFL than the other. So it is your perspective. And that's the hard part that people don't understand sometimes, this, Emmanuel, about the draft process. There are conflicting ideologies.
Yes.
Because the team is trying to find anything that might lower someone's draft value, while the draftee himself is using this entire process, pro day, interviews, the combine, to elevate his draft status.
And make no mistake about it. I remember sitting in old school coaches, they still believe in these a lot of the combine measurables. I was sitting in one of my coach's office when I was in the NFL, and he had a book. It was a thick, thick binder, maybe 200 or so pages. And he had all position groups, and he had former greats. And he was looking at their measurables because he was comparing former greats measurables to combine players' measurables. And he was under the idea, the premonition that I'm not going to take a player unless he fits the build of these former greats. And I think his quote or soundbite was like, if you make too many exceptions, you'll be far from exceptional. That was his theory. That was his belief. As a player, I'll tell y'all, I went to the combine. I weighed in at 238 as a linebacker. I was so nervous about running my 40, I knew I had to run a 4.5. By the time I ran 2 days later, I was 228 that morning. I ended up pulling my quad, probably because of dehydration. So just know, these athletes, they don't take it lightly. They're doing everything they can to test as well as possible.
That is so right. And for those that don't know, I mean, the combine is in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is connected to all these walkways and tunnels because it's cold. And it is amazing. At night, you'll go through the walkways in Indianapolis, and you will see players everywhere with their agents, with their reps, practicing that 40 time on some of those walkways between the buildings. I mean, it is an obsession that takes over them, and they will do anything to try and find that little edge.
Dude, it's so it's stressful. I wish I could let the listener into imagine a job interview, but every future employer is there, and you understand that one word, one action, 1/10 of a second dictates millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars into your bank account. I was slotted to be a between a third and a fifth round pick. Well, after tearing my quad, running the 40, I slide to the 6th round, and my whole rookie season, I could hardly run. That happens because I tried to cut 10 pounds in 2.5 days. And so it's the most nerve-wracking time in a young adult, age 20 to 23-year-old's life.
I'm going to retweet it out. Gil Brandt, you talk about one of those old school guys. Gil Brandt been doing this a long time.
Yep.
He tweeted out, and I'm going to retweet it, a chart for all the different drills that you do there and all the positions. And he put the minimums, the bare minimums he would take from players from a 40 to a bench press to a vert for the different positions. It is pretty amazing because sometimes I think people overvalue the combine a little more. Because I agree with you. I've talked about this a lot. It should be used as to support data, because the only way to check a guy out is how he plays on the field in pads to get a true test of what I believe he's going to do. We're talking to Emmanuel Acho, whose brother, again, in the league now. Your brother, I believe, on the executive committee for the NFLPA. So we just had Lorenzo Alexander on yesterday. He said he did vote in favor of moving on with the CBA. He was one of the 5 who voted for, not the 6 who voted against. They're going to continue to meet in all of this. Now, I've been out of the league way longer than you've been out of the league. What do you think of where they stand in the CBA and how they should go forward?
2 different questions. I'll answer the first one with more urgency. I think there's going to be a strike. Unfortunately, if I can be blatantly honest with you, I think there's going to be a strike because of the 17-game season. The 17-game season is huge for management, huge for the NFL. When you think about TV dollars, we're talking billions of dollars will come in with that 17th game. Here's the problem. Players have started to wise up, and they're like, wait a second. You want us to play another game where the most we can garner is likely $250,000, and y'all are about to get billions? Something don't add up. So when I think of where we are with the CBA, unfortunately, I think there's going to be a strike, which can suit the players like Richard Sherman, J.J. Watt, multimillionaires. But to some of the backup linebackers like I was, some of the $100,000 guys, that is a huge, huge dilemma.
All right, Emmanuel, I want to make sure we're saying the right thing here, because a strike is something that the players would initiate during the season. Yep. A lockout is something that the owners would do because we don't have a CBA Correct. In place. You think there's going to be a strike in this upcoming season?
I think that I don't know when it will happen, and you're exactly right to differentiate a strike between a lockout. A lockout, essentially the owners and management locking the players out from participating, and a strike saying, no, we're good. I do think that there will potentially be a strike. And I say that because the players are looking around, Trey, like they're looking around and saying it's too much money being distributed amongst these owners for us to not be getting a bigger share of the pie. Everybody knows the 52 to 48% revenue share. 52 being what the owners are proposing to get, 48 being what the players are going to get out of that split. And honestly, some of the players are like, that's not enough. I disagree, because I don't think a strike nor a lockout is in anybody's best interest. However, I do see where they're coming from. Like, I understand how they want a 50-50 split. The last thing I'll say on this is they're owners. And nowhere in our history, nowhere in society, and nowhere in our mentality does an owner ever view that in which he owns as an equal. And the players, no matter how good they are exactly that. They're just players. They're not the owners. The owners have leverage.
All right, that's actually a lot for us to digest, and we'll see what happens going forward. But right now, Emmanuel thinks there's going to be a player strike, not an owner's lockout going forward. Emmanuel, we appreciate the time this morning. Thanks very much.
Thanks, man.
Always.
All right, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we will. Yep.
We will. But first, let's get you caught up on what's going on in SportsCenter right now.
Here's Hannah Jump, three-point specialist. And there is Sabrina Ionescu with the rebound. She has just become the first player in Division I history with 2,000 points, 1,000 assists, and 1,000 rebounds. A historic mark set by Sabrina Ionescu.
Again, Adam Amin on ESPN making the call here. Again, Sabrina Ionescu from Oregon. Earlier that day was at Staples Center for the celebration of life for Kobe Bryant and all those that were lost in the crash on January 26th. And then went to Stanford, played in that game, needed 9 rebounds to reach the 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 1,000 assists, the first and male or female in any division to do that. And she did it on 2/24/22, Gianna's number, 24, Kobe's number, 20, Sabrina's number. In the NBA, Bradley Beal, he has been on fire lately. Unfortunately, it hasn't led to wins, but he himself scored a career-high 55 points in Washington's overtime loss to Milwaukee on Monday, becoming the first player to score 50 points on consecutive nights since Kobe Bryant in 2007. And the first player in franchise history to drop 50 points in consecutive games. However, his 50-point efforts haven't ended well for Washington. He's the first player to score 50 points in a loss in consecutive days. On to boxing to continue the story of Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. There will be a third. Deontay Wilder has said he will invoke the clause he has in the contract. He had 30 days from the end of the fight to say if he wanted a rematch, he'll get a rematch. The split will be 60-40 in favor of Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder also told our own Dan Rayfield that his costume, which weighed 40 to 45 pounds, had something to do with his performance Saturday night. He basically said he had to walk in to the arena, walk up the steps. He had that 40 to 45-pound costume on for about 10 to 15 minutes, and when he took it off, he felt his legs were a bit drained, and he does think that had something to do with the fight. That is SportsCenter, and it's brought to you by Shell. Think all premium fuels are the same. Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline is engineered with 4 levels of defense to help keep your engine running like new. It's fuel for thought in engines that continuously use Shell V-Power Nitro Plus premium gasoline.
All right, Golic and Wingo here with you. We just had Emmanuel Acho on with us, who put something out there that we had not heard yet, Mike.
Well, I think it's his opinion.
Yes, it's his opinion. It's interesting. Again, we just had Emmanuel Acho on with us. He told us in no uncertain terms he believes there's going to be a work stoppage in the NFL, but not a lockout. He believes it's going to be a strike, and a player strike. And the only way that can work, Mike, is if the players strike this season.
Yeah.
While there's still a collective bargaining agreement underway. And then, because the lockout would be when the CBA ends after this upcoming season, and then they negotiate, and while they're negotiating with the owners and the players, the owners say, you guys can't come in because we don't have anything to protect ourselves.
All right, let me just start out by saying, first and foremost, I don't think it's getting that far by any stretch of the imagination. But if it does, I also don't think in any way, shape, or form will it be a player strike during the season as opposed to a lockout when the CBA ends after the season. And here's why. What happens during a strike? You mentioned it. I was part of this in '87. We struck. We walked out. And we ended up basically with our tails between our legs, A, because the NFL wasn't giving in to us, and B, our millionaires crossed the picket line and basically screwed all of us foot soldiers. That's what happened in '87. So what happens if players strike? Players walk out, and players, what do they immediately do, Trey? Lose money.
Correct.
They're not getting checks. How much money does the NFL lose in a strike?
Zero.
Why?
Because the TV money's guaranteed.
And makes zero.
And the season tickets are paid for.
0 cents for players to strike. They will accomplish nothing but lose money. If they wait until after the season is over, the way contracts are paid out, you're paid throughout the football season. So at the end of the football season, you have gotten your entire pay. That's when the CBA ends after next season. So why would the players strike, lose money? You have zero leverage. Zero leverage. You're losing money. The owners aren't losing any money. Wait for if you don't like the deal, and again, I don't think it's getting this far. If you don't like the deal, fine. After the season, you all have been paid. You've made all your money. Now, the league, if you don't come to an agreement, will lock you out. But that's okay. It's not okay, but it's the offseason. You're not losing game checks. So if it got that far, it would, in my opinion, it would be a lockout. In no way, shape, or form would it make sense for players to strike. Now, that being said, I don't think there is any shot it gets to that. I think this deal gets done.
And again, why this is a little more interesting coming from Emmanuel, we talked about it. His brother
is on the executive committee.
Sam Acho was a vice president on the NFL executive committee, much like Lorenzo Alexander was, the former Buffalo Bill, who we had on yesterday. He did not allude, Lorenzo, to any strike. In fact, he said he voted in favor of this deal.
It was 6-5 vote against this going to all the NFL, the player reps, but he was one of the 5 who voted to move on with this, to say, let's put it in front of all the player reps. Again, it was 6-5. It wasn't 10-1. It was 6-5. It was a close vote.
Right. So this is the first time we've heard someone say something along those lines. And again, the issue here going forward is who has the control to do this. I mean, when you hear the word strike, the only way the players can strike is while there's a current collective bargaining agreement, right? Which would mean while this season would be going forward.
Yeah, we're going to withhold our services while we're under a CBA.
Under a contract.
Which is exactly what we did in '87.
So and understanding, and we said this, Mike, when you were out last week, if you're willing to go down that road, because baseball has free agency, and they have it because Curt Flood decided that he was willing to risk his career to get free agency. He didn't want to. It just ended up that way. When we talk about the foot soldiers in the NFL, it would be hard-pressed for me to find the majority of the people in the league, 70%, who aren't at that $4 or $5 million a year salary, who are seeing right away at a minimum, guys that are making $585 will jump up to $685, and there'll be all this increase, and they can automatically get that in a cash grab for the next couple of years of their career. I find it hard to believe that a lot of those guys would go along with that.
They're not going to. I do not think they will go along with that at all. Not one bit.
the way we're cross-pollinating sports here for a little bit. Buster Olney, our fine baseball insider, is on the line, and he wants to add to this based on covering the Major League Baseball situation during the 94 strike where there was no World Series. Right. Buster, thanks for being on with us this morning. What can you tell us?
Yeah, and I've been listening to you guys, and I want to make this absolutely clear. I know nothing about the NFL labor situation other than what I read and hear you guys talk about. But in the players' situation, the players in Major League Baseball, they perceive their leverage to be at the highest late in the season going into the really valuable postseason. That's why in 1994, when the Players Association executed a strike, it was on August 12th. The idea that, you know what, we're going to put pressure on the owners because they want to, hold the playoffs, they want to hold the World Series, and that's when we're going to do that. The current labor agreement in baseball expires in December of 2021, but there is a thought among baseball executives, if the currently ugly labor situation does not improve, that the players could draw from the same playbook and, again, be looking at July, August of 2021 if they're going to execute a strike, because they felt that was the best time on the season timetable to do something like that.
Oh, good. So in 2021, we could have a baseball work stoppage and a football work stoppage. Yay. Can we get the NHL in on this? What about the NBA? Can we? I mean, if we're going to do it all in 2021, let's just make a clean sweep across the board. Buster, I'm sort of joking about that, but let me ask you, how serious do you think that is in baseball?
I think it's absolutely going to be on the table as a potential point of interest, a potential leverage point for the players. And here's something else to think about. There has not been a major strike of any of these professional sports leagues since the advent of social media. I really think this is going to be an underrated part of this because, like back in 1994, during that time, there were individual players who behind the scenes were griping and complaining, and the rank and file basically said, shut up, be in the corner, and we're going to do this. Can you imagine the challenge in this era of keeping everybody in line through a player strike? That will be a factor, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whether it's the NHL, something to watch.
No, you're exactly right. You can't ignore that part of it.
Yep.
You can't because there's no way to be insulated.
Yep. Thanks, Buster. We appreciate the info very much. Thank you. This is the baseball union has always been thought to be much stronger than the football union.
Yeah.
The problem, again, in the football union is getting all the guys on the same page, from first-round draft picks to undrafted free agents, who all have different areas of their career that they're in, different money that they're making, and different things that they're looking for in a CBA. I don't see any way at all there is a strike. None.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is I'm with you on that line, because I can understand if there is a work stoppage. If we don't get this deal done sometime soon,
right,
and they play the long game, I think it'll be very similar to what happened in 2011.
Yes.
But that to me would be a lockout.
That'll be a lockout.
That wouldn't be a strike, because the players can only strike while the season's being played.
Right.
I mean, they can say we're on strike, but I mean, it's the same thing as a lockout. So the leverage for a strike would be to take away the games.
Exactly.
That's the only thing.
Now, I guess maybe to Buster's idea of what he said, what if it would be the playoff teams that struck?
Oof.
Right?
Oof.
Would that do anything? Would that be some kind of leverage where you played the entire season and now there's only the playoff teams left and they struck? Now it's on those players because basically all the money is paid out, right? Now only the playoff teams make the extra money now. So if they were to do, I still don't think it'll happen.
Yeah.
I still do. In no way, shape, or form do I think it's going to happen. And if anything happened, it would be a lockout the next offseason. But I really think this is going to get done. I understand the 17 game being the sticking point. I get it.
Sure.
But players will be willing to do it if they get enough back for it. I said that from the very first day of this, when everybody said there's no way they'll play 17. I said they'll play 17 if they get enough for it.
Correct.
That's going to be the only battle there. Do they feel they're getting enough for the 17 games? Right now, if that percentage goes from 47 in the revenue split to 48.5, if they go to 17 games, that's an extra $5 billion over 10 years.
Right.
Do the math. How much is that? It's $500 million a year.
Right.
If my math is correct. That extra.
I'm glad you did that.
That goes. I hope I'm right. that goes to the players.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where you are money wise, and then all the other. There's a lot of middle class to to minimums that are getting raised in this, which is really helping a lot of players.
Correct.
As we said, the millionaires are always going to be the millionaires. And maybe me being a former 10th rounder, I have a little more, a son who was an undrafted free agent. Maybe I have a little more toward that side of it. But most of the players are that.
Yeah.
That's most of the players in the league
correct.
are foot soldiers to minimum guys.
That is correct.
So I have a feeling this is going to get done. If the union wants to go another round to try and negotiate more, we'll see.
There's more on this because the perspective of what you guys were fighting for in '87 has changed dramatically to what the situation is.
And by the way,
92.
let's really quickly say in '93 when we got free agency, we decertified.
Yeah.
We weren't even a union.
Yeah.
We had to decertify to get free agency in the NFL.
They did that again in 2011 during the lockout to keep things going. Lots more on that. And speaking of Major League Baseball, because Buster joined us as well, they weren't saying Altuve. That's for sure. We'll get to that next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.